The transport ship descended through the thin atmosphere of Frost 9, and Taman pressed his face against the window. Below stretched an endless expanse of white ice that glittered under the pale sun. He had never seen anything like it. His homeworld was warm, covered in dense jungles, where his ancestors had hunted for thousands of years. "It looks dead," Hayeri said from the seat beside him. She was smaller than Taman but faster, with reflexes that made her the best fighter in their training group. "It is dead," Minho added. He was the youngest of their group, barely old enough to be included in this training mission. "No prey lives on ice worlds, nothing to hunt." Jiwon said nothing. She rarely spoke, preferring to observe and think. But Taman saw her golden eyes studying the frozen landscape with intense focus. She was always like that, analyzing everything before she acted. The 4 of them were Valrics, members of the greatest predator species in the known galaxy. Their people had conquered 17 star systems through strength and superior combat ability. Every Valric's cub underwent survival training on different worlds, learning to hunt in various environments. Frost 9 was their 3rd trial world. The ship landed with a heavy thud, and the door opened. Cold air rushed in, making Taman's fur stand on end. He stepped out onto the ice and immediately felt strange. The ground was different here. Hard, smooth, slippery. "Stay alert." Their instructor, Commander Sok, called from the ship. "You have 10 days to complete the survival course. Hunt. Build shelter. Navigate to the 3 checkpoints. Prove you are worthy of the warrior name." Taman nodded confidently. He had passed every trial so far. Ice would not defeat him. The ship lifted off, leaving the 4 cubs alone on the frozen plain. For a moment, they stood together, their breath making white clouds in the cold air. "Let us move," Taman said. He took a step forward, and his foot slid out from under him. He barely caught himself, claws scraping uselessly against the smooth ice. Hayeri laughed, then took her own step. She slipped too, windmilling her arms for balance. Minho tried to walk carefully, placing each foot down slowly. But the ice seemed to mock him. His legs went in different directions, and he fell hard on his tail. Only Jiwon remained still, studying the problem. "Our claws cannot grip this surface," she said quietly. "We must find another way to move." But finding another way proved difficult. They tried walking on all 4s. But that was worse. They tried moving very slowly. But that made them fall in slow motion. They tried running fast, thinking speed might help. But that ended with all 4 of them in a tangled heap. By midday, they had traveled less than a kilometer. Taman's pride hurt worse than his bruised body. Warriors of the Valrics did not stumble around like newborn cubs. They were hunters, killers, masters of any terrain. Except, apparently, ice. "This is impossible," Hayeri snarled, frustration making her ears flatten against her skull. "How can anyone live on these frozen death worlds?" "Maybe no one does," Minho suggested. "Maybe that is why they chose it for our trial. To teach us that some places cannot be conquered." "Everything can be conquered," Taman insisted. But even as he said it, he took another step and nearly fell again. They continued struggling across the ice throughout the afternoon. The wind picked up, making their progress even harder. Several times, gusts of wind actually pushed them backward, undoing what little distance they had gained. As the pale sun began to set, Jiwon spotted something in the distance. "Structure," she said, pointing with one clawed hand. Through the dimming light, Taman saw it too. A small building, clearly artificial, sitting on the ice like a dark stone. "Maybe it is a checkpoint," he said hopefully. They made their way toward it, falling and sliding the entire distance. By the time they reached the structure, all 4 cubs were exhausted and humiliated. The building was not a checkpoint. It appeared to be some kind of research station. Lights glowed in the windows, and Taman could see equipment inside. "Someone lives here," Hayeri said. "Who would choose to live on this miserable world?" Before anyone could answer, Hayeri took another step. Her foot hit a patch of especially smooth ice, and both legs went out from under her. She fell hard, landing on her shoulder with a crack that made them all freeze. Hyeri did not get up. She lay on the ice, breathing hard, one arm held at a strange angle. Hyeri! Minho rushed to her side, then slipped and fell himself. The door to the research station opened. A figure emerged, and Taemin's eyes widened in shock. It was a human. The human was tall for his species, wearing thick clothing against the cold. He had no fur, no claws, no natural weapons at all. Just soft skin and fragile body. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as the weak species, too slow to be predators, too soft to be warriors. They survived through tools and technology, not strength. This human looked at the fallen Hyeri, then at the other three cubs watching him warily. He made no aggressive moves. Instead, he went back inside and returned carrying a box. Stay away from her, Taemin growled, moving protectively toward Hyeri despite his own poor balance on the ice. The human stopped. He held up his hands, showing he carried no weapons. Then, he knelt beside Hyeri and opened the box. Medical supplies. Your friend is hurt, the human said in accented but understandable galactic common. I can help. That shoulder is dislocated. We do not need help from prey species, Taemin said, though even he could hear how weak that sounded. Hyeri was hurt. They had no medical supplies. And this human seemed to know what he was doing. The human looked up at Taemin with calm eyes. On this ice, we are all equal. All struggling. I am Do-yun. I study ice here. And right now, your pride matters less than your friend's shoulder. Hyeri made a pained sound. Ji-won stepped forward. Help her, she said quietly. Do-yun nodded and carefully examined Hyeri's shoulder. His movements were gentle, but confident. With one quick motion, he popped the joint back into place. Hyeri yelped, then breathed easier. You should rest, Do-yun said. The station has room. You can stay until morning. Taemin wanted to refuse. But the sun had set, the temperature was dropping fast, and they had traveled barely any distance. He looked at his companions. Minho was shivering. Hyeri could not walk well. Ji-won looked exhausted. Fine, Taemin said. One night. Then, we continue our trial. Do-yun smiled slightly. Of course. But maybe tomorrow. I show you something first. The ice does not have to be your enemy. The four cubs followed the human inside, moving carefully on the slippery ground. None of them knew it yet. But this strange encounter would change everything they thought they knew about strength, about humans, and about themselves. Morning light filled the research station, and Taemin woke to the smell of cooking food. His stomach growled despite his confusion. Where was he? Then, memory returned. The ice. The fall. The human. He sat up quickly, looking around. The station was small, but warm. Through the window, he could see the endless white ice stretching to the horizon. Hyeri slept nearby, her shoulder wrapped in proper medical bandages. Minho and Ji-won were already awake, watching Do-yun prepare breakfast. Your shoulder will heal, Do-yun said to Hyeri, as she stirred awake. But you must be careful for a few days. No sudden movements. Hyeri touched the bandage, then nodded slowly. Thank you, she said, the words clearly difficult for her. Valrix did not often thank anyone, especially not prey species. Do-yun served them food. It was simple, but filling. As they ate, Taemin studied the human. Do-yun moved around the station with easy confidence, never slipping on the smooth floor. Outside, through the window, Taemin could see more ice. Endless, impossible ice. How do you live here? Minho asked. On this frozen world, how do you move? Do-yun smiled. The ice is not so bad when you understand it. It requires a different approach than solid ground. Easy for you to say, Taemin muttered. You stay inside your warm station. I go outside every day, Do-yun replied. I study the ice formations. Measure the movements of the glaciers. Take samples from deep below the surface. I walk many kilometers across the ice. Impossible, Hyeri said. We could barely move a single kilometer. You are human, weaker than us. How could you succeed where we failed? Do-yun stood and walked to a closet. He pulled out strange devices. They looked like boots, but with long blades attached to the bottom. With these, he said. And with knowledge, Taemin stared at the strange boots. What are they? Ice skates, Do-yun answered. Humans invented them thousands of years ago. They let us move across ice like it is nothing. Like we are flying. He sat down and began putting them on. Would you like to see? The 4 cubs followed Do-yun outside. The morning air was cold but clear. The ice stretched away in all directions, gleaming under the pale sun. Do-yun stepped onto the ice. And then he moved. Taemin's jaw dropped. The human glided across the frozen surface like water flowing downhill. Smooth, fast, graceful. He moved in ways that seemed impossible. He turned sharply, the blades on his boots carving lines in the ice. He moved backward as easily as forward. He even jumped, spinning in the air before landing perfectly. This cannot be real, Hyeri whispered, but it was real. They watched as Do-yun skated in circles around them, moving faster than they had managed to walk. He made it look effortless, natural, as if the ice was made for this kind of movement. Finally, Do-yun glided to a stop in front of them. He was barely breathing hard. You see? He said. The ice is not your enemy. It just requires understanding. Taemin felt something hot and uncomfortable in his chest. Pride. Wounded pride. This human, this weak prey species, had just demonstrated abilities that made Taemin look like a helpless cub. It was unacceptable. I challenge you, Taemin said suddenly. A race. Across the ice to that ridge. He pointed to a formation about 2 kilometers away. Do-yun looked at the ridge, then back at Taemin. You want to race? But you cannot move well on the ice yet. I am Valrix, Taemin growled. Hunter. Warrior. I do not need special boots to defeat a human. Hyeri tried to speak. Taemin, maybe we should... No. Taemin interrupted. I will show him. Show all of you. Valric's strength beats human tricks. Do-yun was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. If you wish to race, we will race. But perhaps I should teach you first. Help you learn to move on ice, safely. I need no help from you, Taemin said. We race now. Do-yun sighed. Very well. On your mark. They lined up. Minho counted down. 3, 2, 1, go. Taemin launched himself forward with all his strength. His powerful legs could propel him across normal ground at incredible speeds. He would show this human what real power looked like. His feet hit the ice and immediately slipped. Each step was a battle. His claws scraped uselessly. His balance was all wrong. He fell, got up, fell again. Behind him, he could hear the smooth sound of Do-yun's skates cutting through the ice. The human glided past him effortlessly, moving at a speed Taemin could not match. Taemin tried harder. He pushed with all his might. He called on every bit of his training. None of it mattered. The ice did not care about his strength or his pride. It simply was what it was, and he did not know how to move on it. By the time Taemin finally reached the ridge, falling and sliding the entire way, Do-yun had been waiting for perhaps 5 minutes. The human was not even tired. He stood there calmly, watching Taemin's humiliating approach. Taemin arrived and collapsed, breathing hard. Do-yun knelt beside him. There was no mockery in his expression, no triumph, just patience. The ice does not care how strong you are, the human said quietly. It only cares if you understand it. Behind them, the other cubs had made their way across the ice more slowly. They arrived to find Taemin lying defeated on the frozen ground. "You were right," Taemin said finally, the words like rocks in his throat. "I need help. We all do." Doyun nodded. "Help I can give, but you must be willing to learn, to try something new. To accept that strength alone is not always the answer." Taemin looked up at the human. At this soft, clawless, weak creature who had just moved across the ice like a master, while Taemin had fumbled like a newborn. Maybe humans were not as weak as everyone said. Maybe weakness and strength looked different than he had been taught. "Teach us," Taemin said. "Please." Doyun smiled. "Yes, I will teach you. But first, we must make you some skates. Come." They returned to the station. Doyun had materials there, stored for emergencies. He measured their feet carefully. Valric's feet were different from human feet, wider and with strong claws. But Doyun was clever. He modified the design, using pieces of metal and strong fabric. "These will not be perfect," Doyun explained, as he worked. "Real ice skates take time to make properly. But these will let you learn the basics." By afternoon, he had created 4 pairs of makeshift skates. They were crude, but functional. Each cub strapped them on carefully. "Now," Doyun said, leading them back outside, "we begin with the first lesson. Standing still." Doyun said. "Standing still?" Hyori asked. "That is not impressive." "Standing still on ice is harder than you think," Doyun replied. "Balance is everything. Watch." He demonstrated how to stand with weight distributed evenly, how to keep knees slightly bent, how to use arms for balance. Small things. Simple things. But when the cubs tried, they found it was not simple at all. They wobbled. They waved their arms. They grabbed onto each other. But slowly, with Doyun's patient instruction, they began to understand. "Good," Doyun said after an hour. "You are learning. Tomorrow, we learn to move. But today, just standing is enough." As the sun set again, the 4 cubs stood on the ice in their makeshift skates. Still wobbling. Still uncertain. But standing. Taemin looked at Doyun with new respect. The human had defeated him completely, yet showed no cruelty. Had offered only help. Only teaching. Maybe humans survived in the galaxy not despite being weak, but because they knew things others did not. Because they could learn and adapt and teach. "Thank you," Taemin said. "For this lesson. For your patience." Doyun smiled. "Tomorrow, we learn more. Rest now. The ice is patient. It will wait for you to master it." They went inside as darkness fell. Outside, the ice gleamed under distant stars, waiting for tomorrow's lesson. The next morning, Doyun woke them early. "Today you learn to move," he announced. "Yesterday you learned to stand. Standing is the foundation. Now we build on it." The cubs followed him outside into the cold morning air. Their makeshift skates felt strange on their feet, but less foreign than yesterday. Taemin noticed his body was already starting to adapt, learning the feel of the blades on ice. "First lesson of movement," Doyun said, demonstrating as he spoke. "You do not walk on ice. You glide. Watch my feet." He pushed off with one foot, letting the other slide forward. Then switched. Push and glide. Push and glide. It looked simple when he did it. "Your turn," Doyun said. Taemin tried first. He pushed with his right foot, and immediately his left foot shot forward too fast. He windmilled his arms and crashed onto his side. "Too much power," Doyun said, helping him up. "You are thinking like a runner. Runners push hard. Skaters push smooth. Try again. Less strength, more control." Taemin tried again. This time he pushed more gently. His foot slid forward. For 3 seconds, he was gliding. Then, he lost balance and fell again. But those 3 seconds felt like magic. Better, Doyun said. You felt it, yes? The glide? Yes, Taemin admitted. For a moment, Hyeri went next. She pushed off and managed 5 seconds before falling. Minho got 3. Jiwon, watching the others carefully, managed 7 seconds on her first try. Excellent, Doyun encouraged. You are learning. Now we practice. Fall. Stand. Try again. This is how we learn. They practiced for hours. At first, they fell more than they stood. But slowly, the gliding periods grew longer. Taemin found that when he relaxed, when he stopped trying to force the ice to obey him, he moved better. The ice did not respond to force. It responded to understanding. Why does this work? Jiwon asked during a rest break. Why do the blades help us move when our claws cannot? Doyun seemed pleased by the question. Good thinking. The blades are thin. Yes? They concentrate your weight into a small line. This creates pressure. The pressure melts the ice just a tiny bit, creating a thin layer of water. You actually slide on water, not ice. And the blade cuts through the water smoothly. So we are not defeating the ice, Jiwon said slowly. We are working with it, using its properties. Exactly, Doyun said. This is what humans learned long ago. We cannot always overpower nature, but we can understand it, work with it, turn its properties into advantages. Taemin absorbed this lesson. Back home, Valric's philosophy taught that the strong conquered the weak. That dominance came from superior power. But here, the ice was stronger than any of them. Yet Doyun had not conquered it through strength. He had conquered it through understanding. By afternoon, all 4 cubs could glide short distances without falling. It was progress, though they were still far from Doyun's effortless grace. Now, Doyun said. Turning proved even harder than gliding straight. It required shifting weight, leaning into the turn, trusting the blades to grip the ice at an angle. Taemin fell dozens of times. Each fall taught him something new. Minho struggled the most at first. He was the smallest and his balance was harder to maintain. But Doyun spent extra time with him, showing him how his smaller size was actually an advantage. Lower center of gravity, Doyun explained. You can turn tighter than the others. Use your size as strength. With this encouragement, Minho began to improve rapidly. Soon, he was executing turns that the others could not match. How? Hyeri demanded, after watching Minho spin a tight circle. How are you doing that? I stopped trying to be big, Minho said with a grin. Started being small on purpose. Over the following days, they trained constantly. Doyun taught them how to fall safely, rolling to distribute impact. How to stop, by turning the blade sideways. How to skate backwards by switching their weight distribution. Each lesson built on the last. Each day they improved. During rest periods, they talked. Doyun told them about Earth, about ice skating, sports like hockey and figure skating, about humans who moved on ice so beautifully it looked like dancing, about frozen lakes and winter competitions. Humans created games on the ice? Hyeri asked, fascinated. You chose to spend time on this cold surface? Ice skating is considered fun on my world, Doyun explained. Children learn it young. Families skate together. It is part of our culture in cold regions. The cubs shared their own stories. Tales of hunting in the jungles, of warrior trials and combat training. Doyun listened with genuine interest, asking questions, showing respect for their culture even as they learned from his. Taemin noticed something changing between them. At first, the cubs had seen Doyun as prey, then as a strange anomaly. Now they saw him as something else. A teacher. A friend. One evening, after a particularly good training session, They sat together watching the sunset paint the ice in shades of orange and purple. "Why did you help us?" Taemin asked Doyun. "That first day, you could have stayed inside. Let us struggle." Doyun was quiet for a moment. "Because you needed help, and because I believe that knowledge should be shared. I have spent years studying ice, learning to move on it. If I keep that knowledge to myself, what good is it? But if I share it, then others can benefit. The knowledge grows. Everyone becomes stronger." End quote. Quote. With a quote, 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 end quote, quote. "That is not how most species think," Jiwon observed. "Most keep their advantages secret. Use them against rivals. Perhaps that is why humans survived," Doyun said. "We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We have no claws or fangs or armor. But we share knowledge. We teach each other. Every human who learns something can teach others. Our strength multiplies." Taemin thought about this. The Valric's way was individual strength, personal power. Each warrior earned their own glory. But what Doyun described was different. Collective strength, shared knowledge, making everyone more capable. "I understand now," Taemin said slowly. "Why humans spread so far in the galaxy. You do not conquer through power. You conquer through adaptation, through learning and teaching." Doyun smiled. "We prefer to say we explore and cooperate rather than conquer. But yes, adaptability is our strength." By the end of the 5th day, the cubs could skate with confidence. They could glide long distances, turn sharply, stop safely. Minho had even learned to jump small obstacles. Hyeri, once her shoulder fully healed, proved to be incredibly fast on the ice. "You are ready," Doyun announced one morning. "Ready for advanced techniques." "There is more?" Minho asked, excited. "Much more," Doyun said with a grin. "Now I teach you the aggressive moves. The combat, skating." The cubs perked up at this. Combat was their language. Doyun led them to a marked area of ice he had prepared. "On Earth, we have a sport called ice hockey," he explained. "Players move very fast and make hard contact. They use skating for combat purposes. Watch." He demonstrated aggressive stops that sprayed ice. Quick direction changes to evade opponents. Methods of using body weight while skating to push against others. Ways to steal space and control territory on ice. The cubs took to this immediately. Their natural combat instincts, combined with their new skating skills, created something formidable. Taemin learned to charge across the ice and stop in an explosion of ice crystals. Hyeri mastered the quick dodge and counter movement. Jiwon developed techniques for controlling space and predicting opponent movements. "You are becoming dangerous on the ice," Doyun said approvingly. "In the right way. Controlled danger." They practiced combat skating for 2 more days, mock battles on the ice where they chased and evaded each other. The ice that had once been their enemy was now their ally, their weapon, their advantage. On the 8th day, as they finished a training session, an alarm sounded from Doyun's station. He rushed inside, and the cubs followed. Doyun checked his instruments, his face growing serious. "Storm coming," he said. "Big one. We should prepare." But as he spoke, another sound reached them. A distress signal on the Valric's emergency frequency. Jiwon quickly accessed the message. Her face went pale under her fur. "The transport ship," she said. "Commander Sok's ship. It has crashed. They are trapped." The cubs looked at each other in horror. Their people needed help. But outside, the storm was building. Dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The wind, already growing fierce. This would be their greatest test. The distress signal crackled through the station speakers. Commander Sok's voice, strained with pain, gave their coordinates. The ship had crashed in a deep crevasse field, 10 kilometers north. Multiple injuries. Life support failing. They needed rescue urgently. The training camp must respond, Hyri said, already moving toward the communication panel. They have rescue equipment. Doyun was checking weather data on his screens. His expression grew darker with each passing second. The storm is moving faster than predicted. Look. 1. I was not with her 1. 1BR. Undren nodding to the 47. On the screen, a massive weather system spiraled toward them. Wind speeds that would make walking impossible. Whiteout conditions. Temperature drops that could freeze exposed flesh in minutes. Jiwan accessed the training camp frequency. This is Scout Group 7, requesting emergency response. Commander Seok's transport has crashed. Coordinates transmitted. The response came quickly. Scout Group 7. This is Base Commander Rakil. We received the distress signal. All rescue teams are grounded. The storm is too severe. We cannot reach them until it passes. How long? Jiwan asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. 18 to 20 hours. Silence fell in the station. 20 hours was too long. The message had said life support was failing. Commander Seok and the other adults might not have 20 hours. They will die, Minho whispered. Our teacher. The pilots. All of them. Taemin's claws extended involuntarily. Every instinct screamed at him to act, to help, to save his people. But what could they do? They were just cubs. And the storm was coming. The standard rescue vehicles cannot navigate the crevasse field, even in good weather, Doyun said, studying a map. Too many gaps in the ice. Too unstable. That is why the ship crashed there in the first place. Then they are doomed, Hyeri said bitterly. We can do nothing. Doyun looked up from his screens. His eyes moved from the map to the cubs to the window where their skates lay ready. Maybe not nothing, he said slowly. What do you mean? Taemin asked. The crevasse field, Doyun explained, pulling up detailed terrain maps. Vehicles cannot cross it. Walking would be too slow and dangerous. But skating. He traced a route with his finger. Small, fast, maneuverable. Someone on skates could navigate between the crevasses, could reach them. You want to skate into that storm? Jiwan said. 10 kilometers through a crevasse field in whiteout conditions? I have instruments, Doyun said. Ground-penetrating radar that can detect weak ice. Thermal sensors to track body heat. Communications gear. And I know this moon's ice patterns. I have mapped much of this region. Taemin felt hope spark in his chest. You would go? Risk yourself for our people? If there is a chance, yes, Doyun said simply. But I cannot go alone. I need help. People who can navigate while I monitor instruments. People who can assist with rescue once we arrive. The 4 cubs looked at each other. The decision was instant and unanimous. We go with you, Taemin said. Absolutely not, came Commander Rakil's voice over the comm. You are cubs, trainees. This is not your responsibility. With respect, Commander, Jiwan said, her quiet voice firm. We are the only option. We can skate. We can navigate the crevasses. And we will not leave our people to die. You do not have authority to. Taemin cut the comm. We are going. They can punish us later if we survive. Doyun was already gathering equipment. Then we prepare quickly. The storm will hit in less than an hour. We must leave immediately. They moved with purpose. Doyun distributed gear, thermal suits, safety ropes, emergency supplies. He checked their skates, making quick adjustments. The cubs helped pack medical supplies and rescue equipment onto a light sled that they could pull behind them. The route is dangerous, Doyun explained, showing them the map. We must cross 3 major ice ridges and navigate through the crevasse field. I will lead with the instruments. Taemin, you follow directly behind me. Hyeri and Jiwan on the flanks. Minho, you take rear position and manage the rescue sled. Why Minho at the rear? Hyeri asked. He is the smallest and most agile, Doyun said. If the sled encounters problems, he can react fastest. And if anyone falls behind, he can circle back quickly. Minho nodded, accepting the responsibility. They did final equipment checks. Outside, the wind was already howling. The sky had turned an ugly gray-brown. Snow had started to fall. Not gently, but in angry horizontal sheets. Last chance to reconsider, Doyun said. Once we enter that storm, there is no easy return. We do not reconsider, Taemin said. We are Valrics. We protect our own. And humans? Doyun asked with a slight smile. Do you also protect humans who help you? Yes, Taemin said, surprised to realize he meant it completely. We protect our friends. They stepped out into the storm. The wind hit them like a physical blow. Snow stung their faces. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. But Doyun activated his instruments, and a holographic display appeared, showing the terrain ahead. Stay close, Doyun called over the wind. Follow my path exactly. Trust the instruments. They began to skate. Within minutes, the station had disappeared behind them. There was only white. White above, white below, white in every direction. The wind tried to push them off course. The snow tried to blind them. But they moved forward, skating in formation. Doyun's instruments showed the way. Green lines on the holographic display indicated safe ice. Red zones marked danger. He navigated between them, calling out warnings. Sharp left in 3 meters, weak ice on the right, maintain speed. The cubs followed his instructions precisely. Their training served them well. Days of practice had made the movements automatic. They could skate without thinking, which let them focus on navigation and staying together. The first ice ridge appeared suddenly through the blowing snow. It rose 3 meters high. A wall of frozen water. We go around, Doyun said, adjusting course. Too steep to climb while skating. Dom. They skirted the ridge, adding distance but maintaining speed. Behind them, Minho managed the sled expertly, preventing it from catching or tipping. The storm intensified. Wind speeds increased. Temperature dropped further. Taemin's face was numb despite the thermal gear. His lungs burned from breathing the frozen air. But they kept moving. 2 hours into the journey, disaster nearly struck. Jiwon, skating on the left flank, suddenly broke through a thin section of ice. She plunged into freezing water, up to her chest. Jiwon, Hyeri screamed, but Jiwon was already reacting. She spread her arms wide, preventing herself from going fully under. Her claws found purchase on the solid ice edge. Doyun skated over quickly, trailing a safety rope. Grab on! Jiwon caught the rope. Together, Doyun and Hyeri pulled her out. She was soaked and shivering, but alive. Can you continue? Doyun asked. Jiwon nodded, teeth chattering. They gave her dry outer layers and kept moving. The storm did not care about their crisis. It only grew worse. By the 4th hour, they had crossed 2 of the 3 ridges. They were more than halfway to the crash site. But they were exhausted. The storm was at its peak. Visibility was 0. They could only see the holographic displays from Doyun's instruments. The crevasse field is ahead, Doyun warned. This is the most dangerous part. Single file. Watch for my signals. They entered the field. Great cracks in the ice, some narrow enough to jump, others dozens of meters wide that they had to navigate around. One wrong move would send them plunging into darkness. Doyun's instruments showed the safe paths. He called out each turn, each dangerous spot. The cubs followed with absolute trust. They had learned to trust the human, to trust his knowledge and his technology. Halfway through the crevasse field, Minho called out, I see it. Thermal signature ahead. Doyun checked his instruments. Confirmed. The crash site. 1 more kilometer. They pushed through their exhaustion. 1 more kilometer. They could do this. The crashed ship appeared through the storm like a fallen giant. It lay on its side, wedged between 2 ice walls. Emergency lights still blinked weakly. They had made it, but the storm still raged around them, and the hardest part was yet to come. They had to get inside, rescue the survivors, and somehow make it back through the storm. Do-yoon looked at the 4 cubs. All of them were exhausted, frozen, pushed beyond their limits. But they stood ready. Now we save them, Do-yoon said. Together, they approached the broken ship. The crashed ship groaned in the wind. Metal creaked against ice. Emergency lights flickered weakly through the blowing snow. Taemin approached carefully, testing each step. The area around the crash was unstable, broken ice and shifted slabs creating a treacherous maze. There, Ji-won pointed. An emergency hatch on the ship's side. Half buried in snow, they dug frantically, clearing snow with their claws and hands. The hatch was jammed. Do-yoon examined it with his instruments, while the storm tried to tear them away. The frame is bent, he shouted over the wind. We need leverage. Taemin and Hyeri forced their claws into the gap. They pulled with all their strength. The metal groaned. The hatch moved slightly. Minho added his effort. Together, they wrenched it open enough for someone to slip through. Minho, Do-yoon said, you are smallest. You go first. Minho squeezed through the gap and disappeared. Seconds felt like hours. Then his voice called back. Safe to enter. But bad. Very bad. They widened the gap and climbed inside. The ship's interior was chaos. Equipment had torn loose during the crash. Emergency lighting cast red shadows. And there, in the main compartment, they found Commander Sok and 3 others. Commander Sok was conscious but badly injured. His leg was trapped under a fallen support beam. The pilot and 2 technicians were unconscious but breathing. The air was cold, barely warmer than outside. Life support was failing, as the distress message had warned. Cubs? Commander Seok's voice was weak with pain and confusion. How did you reach us? The storm. We skated, Taemin said simply. Do-yoon taught us. The commander's eyes moved to the human. You brought them through that storm? Are you insane? Perhaps, Do-yoon said, already examining the trapped leg. But they were the only ones who could make the journey. And they insisted on coming. We do not abandon our people, Hyeri said firmly. Do-yoon assessed the situation quickly. We need to free the commander and stabilize the others for transport. The ship's power is failing. We have maybe 30 minutes before life support stops completely. They worked as a team. Ji-won used a damaged panel as a lever to lift the beam, while Taemin pulled Commander Sok free. The commander's leg was badly broken. Do-yoon applied emergency medical treatment, working with supplies from both the ship and their rescue pack. The 3 unconscious Valrics had various injuries but could be moved. Hyeri and Minho secured them onto the transport sled, covering them with thermal blankets. The return journey will be harder, Do-yoon warned. We are pulling wounded. The storm has not decreased. And we are all exhausted. We made it here, Taemin said. We will make it back. They carefully moved the injured through the hatch and secured them on the expanded sled. Commander Seok remained conscious, gritting his teeth against the pain. This is impossible, he muttered. Cubs should not be able to do this. These cubs learned from the best teacher, Minho said, nodding at Do-yoon. The return journey began. They moved slower now, burdened with wounded. The sled was heavier. The storm seemed angrier. As if offended, they had succeeded this far. Do-yoon led, instruments guiding their path. But fatigue was catching up to him. Taemin saw the human stumbling, exhaustion showing in his movements. Ji-won, Taemin called. Take lead position. Follow Do-yoon's instruments. Do-yoon, move to center. Conserve your energy. Do-yoon nodded gratefully. Ji-won moved forward, her analytical mind perfect for reading the instrument displays. She called out navigation commands, while Do-yoon recovered slightly. They crossed back through the crevasse field. Every gap was a challenge now, with the heavy sled. They had to work together, timing their movements perfectly. Minho proved invaluable, his small size and agility allowing him to scout ahead and find the safest paths. 2 hours into the return, they hit their first major obstacle. An ice shelf had collapsed, blocking their original route. The instruments showed no safe path around it. "We have to go over," Do-yoon said, studying the terrain. "It is steep, but possible." Going over meant pulling the sled up a slope while maintaining their own balance on skates. It seemed impossible. "We do the impossible today," Taemin said. "We already proved that." They approached the slope. Hyori and Jiwon took the sides of the sled. Taemin and Minho positioned themselves at the back to push. Do-yoon went ahead to check the stability of the upper surface. "On 3, Taemin called. 1, 2, 3. They pushed and pulled. The sled moved upward slowly. Their blades scraped against ice, searching for grip. The wounded Valrics on the sled groaned. Commander Sok called out encouragement despite his own pain. Halfway up, Minho's blade caught on a rough patch. He started to fall backward. Taemin grabbed him instantly, holding him steady while maintaining pressure on the sled. "I have you," Taemin said. "Keep pushing." They reached the top. All of them were gasping, muscles screaming. But they were over the obstacle. The storm began to ease slightly. They were 3 hours into the return journey. 4 more to go, until they reached Do-yoon's station. Commander Sok called out from the sled. "Stop. Rest. You are pushing too hard. We rest when we finish." Hyori called back. "Not before." But the commander was right. They needed brief rest. They stopped for 5 minutes, huddling against the wind, drinking water, and eating emergency rations. The wounded Valrics were stable but needed real medical care soon. "Why did you do this?" Commander Seok asked them. "You could have stayed safe. Let the proper rescue teams come after the storm." "After the storm would be too late," Jiwon said simply. "And we are proper rescue team now. Do-yoon made us one." Commander Sok looked at the human with new understanding. "You taught them more than skating. They taught themselves." Do-yoon replied. "I only showed them the tools. They provided the courage and determination." They continued. The storm's peak had passed, but conditions were still dangerous. Visibility improved slightly. They could see perhaps 20 meters now instead of 5. The 4th ice ridge appeared. This one they had gone around on the outbound journey. But the detour would add an hour to their trip. Time they did not have. "We go over," Taemin decided. "Straight path. Too steep," Do-yoon warned. "With the sled, we could lose control. Then we control it," Taemin said. Together, like everything else today, they approached the ridge. It was steep, yes, but they had grown so much in the past days. The ice that had once been impossible terrain was now familiar ground. Do-yoon secured safety lines to the sled. If it started to slide uncontrollably, they could hold it. Hyori and Jiwon went first, establishing positions on the slope. Then Taemin and Minho guided the sled upward, while Do-yoon spotted from above. It was slow, careful work. Each meter gained was a victory. The wounded remained stable, secured tightly to the sled. Commander Sok had gone unconscious from pain, which was perhaps better. They crested the ridge. The descent on the other side was even more dangerous. Too fast and they would crash. Too slow and they would lose control. "We ride it," Minho suggested. "Like we practiced. The hockey stops." Do-yoon nodded. "Yes. We control the descent with stops." "Good thinking, Minho." They started down. Every few meters, they executed the aggressive stops. Do-yoon had taught them, spraying ice and controlling speed. The technique worked. They descended the ridge safely. 2 hours from the station, disaster struck. A final test from the ice moon. A deep crack appeared ahead, too wide to jump with the sled. It had not been there during their outbound journey. The storm had shifted the ice, creating new dangers. "We are trapped," HFY said, but Ji-won was studying the crack. "Not trapped. Look. It narrows there." She pointed. "Maybe 4 meters wide. Without the sled, we could jump it." "But we need the sled," Minho said. Do-yoon examined the crack carefully. "Unless we make a bridge." The sled itself could span the gap. They understood immediately. They positioned the sled across the narrow point of the crack. It was just long enough. The wounded Valrics had to be moved off it temporarily, carefully lowered to a wide ice shelf beside the crack. Then, one by one, they skated across the sled bridge. It bent and creaked but held. HFY went first, lightest and fastest. Then Ji-won. Then Minho. Taemin and Do-yoon remained on the other side with the wounded. They carefully moved Commander Sok first, pulling him across the makeshift bridge. Then, the others. Finally, Taemin and Do-yoon crossed together, pulling the sled after them. The ice groaned. The sled bridge shifted. But they made it. "Nearly there," Do-yoon said, checking his instruments. "1 more hour. Just, Do-yoon. 1 more hour." That final hour was the hardest. They were beyond exhaustion, running on pure determination. But the station appeared ahead, lights glowing through the diminishing storm. They pulled into the station compound just as their strength completely failed. They had been traveling for 7 hours through the worst storm Frost 9 had seen in years. Emergency teams from the training camp arrived minutes later, having waited out the storm's peak. They found 4 cubs and 1 human collapsed around a sled carrying 5 injured Valrics, all alive. Commander Rakil emerged from the lead rescue vehicle. He stared at the scene in disbelief. "You actually did it," he said. "You impossible, reckless, heroic cubs." Medical teams took over, stabilizing and transporting the injured. Commander Seok regained consciousness as they loaded him onto a proper medical sled. "Cubs," he called, weakly. They gathered around him. "You saved us. All of us." "The human made it possible," Taemin said. "He taught us. We learned." Commander Sok looked at Do-yoon. "You have my gratitude. My life debt. The Valrics do not forget such things." "No debt necessary," Do-yoon said. "I helped friends. That is what friends do." Days later, after the injured had been treated and the storm damage repaired, there was a ceremony at the training camp. The 4 cubs stood before assembled Valrics warriors and instructors. Commander Rakil spoke. "These cubs were sent here to prove themselves, to complete a simple survival trial. Instead, they accomplished something greater. They learned from an unexpected teacher. They mastered impossible terrain. They executed a rescue that trained warriors could not. They have earned their warrior names ahead of schedule. 1. Their 1-2's 200. A1. He presented each of them with honor tokens. But more importantly, he presented Taemin with a special token. "This is for your teacher," Rakil said, "for the human Do-yoon. It marks him as Brother of the Pride, a title rarely given to any outside our species, never before given to a human." Taemin took the token and later presented it to Do-yoon privately. "You taught us more than skating," Taemin said. "You taught us that strength comes in many forms, that the wise learn from everyone, that adaptation is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all." Ada. Do-yoon accepted the token with emotion. "You were excellent students. The best teacher could ask for." "What will you do now?" HFY asked. "Will you stay on Frost 9? "For a while," Do-yoon said. "But eventually, I will go to other ice worlds, study more glaciers, maybe teach more cubs who need help." He smiled. "Someone has to teach the galaxy to skate." They said their goodbyes. The cubs departed Frost 9, to continue their training elsewhere. But they carried their makeshift skates with them, and the lessons they had learned. Months later, reports began to circulate through the galaxy. Young Valrix warriors, fighting with unusual footwork, moving in patterns no one had seen before, using techniques that baffled opponents and impressed allies. When asked, they would explain. They had learned from a human on a frozen moon, a teacher who showed them that ice could be mastered, not through force, but through understanding, who proved that humans survived in the galaxy not despite weakness, but because of adaptability and the wisdom to learn from everyone. And on Frost 9, Doyun continued his research. But now, visiting species would sometimes find him teaching, skating, to other young aliens struggling on the ice, teaching them the same lessons he taught the Valrix cubs. The ice does not care how strong you are. It only cares if you understand it. And understanding, Doyun would say with a smile, is the beginning of all strength. Far away, on a Valrix warship, Taemin stood on the bridge as a newly commissioned warrior. He kept his worn skates in his quarters, a reminder of the moon, where he learned the greatest lesson of his life, that predators can learn to glide, and sometimes the best teacher is the one you least expect.